Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur, and in year 8, we're taking head-on two of your most pressing concerns, that of funding and mentoring. I'm Sunanda Jayasheelan. Tonight on the show, a masterclass on what it takes to scale here in the country, whether you're in the online or the offline world. We're also talking marketplace and the marketplace model for businesses. Let me quickly introduce our experts in studio. First up is Archana Vora. She's Director of Small and Medium Businesses at Facebook India. Next, we have Deepak Gaur, Managing Partner at Ceph Partners, and Vidit Atre, Co-founder and CEO of Meesho. It's so good to have each of you on this panel, this very special panel where we're talking about what it takes to scale in India. And we are in fact terming tonight's panel as a masterclass when it comes to scaling as well as marketplaces in India. And who better than to have the three of you? So Archana, Vidit, Deepak, thank you so much for your time here in studios tonight. Archana, as a person who's so closely working with SMBs and has been so closely working with SMBs for a while now in the country, looking at how businesses are scaling, if there's one thing that you want to tell them, saying that this is perhaps, what you need to do, what you need to keep in mind when it comes to scaling, no matter what industry you're in, no matter whether you're a startup, whether you're an SME or an MSME.
I think there are about 140 million businesses that currently exist on Facebook today, globally, right? And the three key things I think specific to India that I'd like to kind of talk about is one, skill yourself and skill yourselves digitally early on. Right, that's the first big part, because a lot of the businesses, and I'm going to use the term SMB slightly loosely here, typically start their journeys offline, and when they go online, there are some early learnings that they need to get in terms of platforms, ROI, how do they grow their business. So that's the first one. The second thing is more a challenge, I think, which is I'd love to see more women entrepreneurs in the space. Even currently, as we see, and we did a research on the same as well, which tells us that there are only about 20% of the women who get some kind of capital assistance funding, even though on the platform today there are nearly 18% women owners of businesses or business pages.
Okay, you're talking specific to Facebook.
So specific to Facebook family of apps. I think the third bit that's very critical as well is I think there needs to be an inflow of investment, which is great, which comes in from a lot of the funds, but I think it's equally critical for them to have access to credit, also critical for them to start learning ways to manage their businesses in a way that they can start utilizing the money better in options that enable their business versus just marketing, right?
Sure.
So on a platform like, say, a Facebook or any other platform, you get global reach immediately. So therefore, that gives you ready cash to start deploying in inventory in any of the other places where you see there is need for more capital, and to so realize that journey early and then go on to that as well.
Sure. I understand you have an investment portfolio of 315 million, looking largely at early stage startups. Looking at the businesses that you are either closely working with or that are perhaps pitching to you, what do you see is common? What would you want for a business which is watching this interview to know about fundraising and about making the right pitch to be able to raise the funds?
Okay. In terms of fundraising pitch, I think that's something that we really look out for. What we really want is an expression that the problem statement that they have or what they're trying to solve is large and real. Because many times founders they make the mistake of attacking a problem which is just too close to them or they identify with, but that problem might not be large. Okay. And it is quite okay if the problem is latent, that it's not fully expressed, but people should be able to identify with it. The larger number of people are able to identify it, the larger opportunity can become. So that's the first thing that we look at. The second thing we look at is the operating model or the thinking in terms of how this problem would be attacked, feasible or not. Is it realistic? Is it feasible? Can it actually happen in the environmental constraints that we have? And third is distinctiveness about it, that many others might have tried it. What is the unique angle that you are bringing to attack that problem? I think once these three things are there, then it becomes far easier to raise capital.
Okay, I want to open this up to the panel and talk about the big picture, and that is doing business in India itself. If before we talk about scaling, if we can talk about what it takes for businesses in India right now. in the digital era to have a business that is sustainable, to have, for instance, like you're saying, identifying the right problem and having the solution for that? Archana, you were saying, being able to also utilize the kind of funds that they're raising and being able to utilize it efficiently. What are some of the things that you think that it's necessary for businesses in today's age to keep in mind, whether they're in the offline world or the online world, and be able to sustain? And this is open to all of you.
I think I'll give you multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
We are a 3-year-old product, so we have seen a lot of the scaling in the recent years. And I think for us as a tech company, it was very, very important that we get to a product market fit in the beginning, figure out organic channels of growth rather than spending a lot of money right in the beginning builds wrong habits, figuring out how can you use word of mouth, existing users to come onto platform and create some value. And these have been some of the key levers of how we could grow so fast, being super capital efficient, which is very, very important in a market where margins will never be very large. You have to be super conscious of it.
Sure.
Giving the other perspective of lots of small businesses on our platform. So we have about 40,000 small manufacturers or traders across the country. And we see that a lot of these guys are trying to figure out how to stay relevant when a lot of distribution is moving online. Right? And this is a big transition for everyone out there. No one knows what to do. So these guys have heard that, hey, let's go list on Amazon, Flipkart. Most of them don't succeed. Then they don't know what to do. So they go and create websites. Again, they don't know how to get to distribution. So a lot of these small businesses are trying to figure out answers to this. And we as a marketplace, our responsibility is how do we guide them with the right tools, with the right direction, telling them what is working out there, what is not working out there. And we have seen a lot of these guys have become successful in the last 2-3 years, and it'll only just get better.
Sure. So Archana, as a platform that's increasingly becoming the go-to when it comes to the marketplaces in India, like Vidit is saying, everyone is figuring out things as they're moving along, because these are businesses that are now so small but are being exposed to the globe because they're selling online. What in your mind is it really taking for businesses if they are looking at starting and sustaining a business in the digital ecosystem?
I think I'll just take a step back. I think the first step really is how do you get online, right? I think all of us have gotten into the point of scale without realizing that there are millions and millions of businesses that even haven't started that journey yet. So I think the first bit is really find the most ROI efficient way of getting online. And that could be the creating a page that could at least start the journey, as Vidit said, on the organic side. And all of these platforms, including the Facebook family of apps, allow you to do that. Once you have a sense of that, then it becomes equally critical to start finding what your audience set is, how are you going to acquire the customers. That's the second bit. And therefore learn on the platform to know what is the most efficient way to acquire a customer. Solve for what could be the most effective customer acquisition rate at scale. Because you may start and say, hey, I spent 3,000 rupees today and I got X customers, but tomorrow my need is 3 lakh customers, and that's what you're eventually solving for. So learn fast, test, learn, measure, and use platforms like Facebook and any other to get your measurement right, to know that you're actually getting value for money. I think that would be the second part. I think the third piece that's also equally critical is when you start your journey of scale, there are always going to be 10 levers, right? You will want more customers, you want your profit margins to get better, you'll start facing inventory churn, you'll suddenly have more orders than you can service. I think so the next bit really is stay exceptionally customer focused. Because what will typically start happening is once you start scaling, and a lot of these platforms, reviews are equally critical. So people will start buying your products, but they will also start saying, hey, I didn't get my product in 3 days. And you said I will get my product in 3 days. So I think stay very, very customer engaged, solve backwards from there. And the fourth bit, I think, which is also important, but is, I don't see that happening with a lot of the early investments, is also know what your next step on your product market fit is going to be. So if you're solving for a problem today, the problem is end-to-end really large. So if you've solved for the first part of the problem, which could have been solved via awareness, for example, how do you get it to be more stronger on the funnel and solve for, say, consideration or conversion and keep a longer pipeline, right? Your business needs to be at least a 5-year run. So solve like that versus trying to solve for one small problem every day.
Sure. Deepak, I want you to respond to some of the things that Archana has said in terms of being able to solve for the long run, but also to comment on what's it taking from the businesses that you are talking to and hand-holding. When it comes to mentoring, some of the points that Archana has raised, for instance, a lot of it perhaps is because businesses don't have access to those mentors who can tell them this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't be doing. How much of that perhaps becomes easier by having a partner like yourself on board?
Sure. So maybe I'll answer it in two parts. I mean, just building on Archana's point, digitization or digital access, like any other strong trend, has its positives and challenges. If you're a startup or an emerging business, it provides you a lot of positives in terms of market access, reaching out to customers which are very fragmented, creating a visibility or through customer reviews. But it also has the biggest challenge that the status quo is not an option, because anything that you do wrong gets magnified on online platforms. There are always, because barriers to entry, at least if you're an upstart brand, are low, there will be many new competitors who will try to do that. So similarly, if you're a large business, status quo, the timelines or the clock speed at which you need to innovate is much faster, because there are far more younger, energetic, nimble companies and people who are trying to encroach on your turf. So I think that's the challenge associated with digitization and digital access.
Okay, I'm going to pick up on that point, but we have to slip into a very short break. On that note, we will continue this masterclass on scaling as well as what it takes for the digital marketplaces here in the country. 3 of the biggest experts in studio with us tonight. Back in just a moment. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight we're continuing this masterclass on scaling and marketplaces here in the country, talking about what you, the entrepreneur, should keep in mind when it comes to scaling, when it comes to fundraising and selling on the marketplaces here in the country. An expert panel joining us in studio. So just before we took a break, Deepak, we were talking about what it takes from the businesses that you've seen in terms of scaling. We here on the Leaders of Tomorrow this season, our overarching theme is small to scalable. What does it take for businesses to go from small to have scale? One thing that we look at, and one of the, the legs, if I can call it that, of scalability really is the team. How much of an emphasis is being placed on the team? And, this question, perhaps for the two of you, you can also pitch in with it with your experiences. How much of an emphasis is placed on the team when you're looking at businesses, when it comes to scale, when you're looking at funding perhaps, and what role does that play? If you're a single founder, then should you be looking at having a co-founder, etc. In the long run, when it comes to scaling, how early on perhaps should you bring on a partner like yourself to help you in this growth journey as well? If you can respond to that.
So team is a very fundamental pillar of scaling, and in terms of team, it is not just the skill set of the team, but even the mindset and attitude of the team, which you need to build in, because if you have a team which is solving only for today, or is bringing a lot of individual emphasis to how the problem is being solved, it will not scale when you are in a wider geography or at a much larger scale. As far as the question of getting a co-founder or not, I think that's less relevant because it's ultimately a role and a designation. But you definitely need people who complement your skill set. They can be early employees, they can be large ESOP holders, or they can be with some other designation like co-founder. But you definitely need people around you who challenge you as well as build for scale.
Okay. Anyone else wants to pitch in?
I think I'll double down on what Deepak is saying. So obviously team is exceptionally critical, right? That's a given. But I think what's also exceptionally critical is having the right mentors. So for example, with SAF as well, we ran this program called the VC Brand Incubator Program. And we do it with a whole set of other VCs too, where we bring in brands that have just been funded. And therefore we try and handhold them to a journey to say what's most critical for you today. If you've just started off, then maybe the next set of things that you need to do do is, yes, double down on organic, as Vidit said, but also how do you kind of find the right tools that get you to start scaling almost immediately, but remain efficient? I think that's something you need to do exceptionally early on. We also do that specifically for women. We do it as part of She Leads Tech, which is just completely women entrepreneurs focused, or She Means Business, which is just learn digital, right? So on either side, there are about 600 women on this side that are part of She Leads Business. There's about nearly 4 lakh women who are on part of She Means Business. But I think that's the most critical piece, skill early, because that's the piece that I think a lot of times in the hustle to kind of be number one, we tend to miss. And even when you're talking customer focus, right, quantify what customer focus means. It just doesn't mean, hey, thank you so much for buying a product, and an email that comes into your inbox. It also means, are you tracking for LTV? Are you tracking for repeat purchase? What's the size of the cart? Have you optimized for the size of the cart? What's the next product you're coming up with? So I think a lot of those pieces also become exceptionally critical with a great team.
Okay, do you want to add something to that?
So I totally agree with Deepak's and Archana's points here. I'll just add a few points from our own journey. I think apart from the point that you need to have people who complement your skill set, because no one will know everything. So some people will be good at technology, some people will be good at product, some will be good at customer experience, thinking about what does customer obsession of a particular product mean. But apart from that, in the early part of this journey, it's very important to get generalist in much more than specialist, right? Because a lot of problems are unstructured. And you need people who are okay with getting very general outcome-based problems rather than saying, hey, this is what the function needs to be. So getting people who are great generalists is very important. People should have a very entrepreneurial kind of mindset in terms of approaching things. Again, what does that mean? It means trying to be super resourceful, trying to do a lot with less number of resources because it's the early stage of the company, trying to learn as much as you can by, again, like for example, figuring out mentors from your college alumni, from other people in the ecosystem, even if you don't know a lot of them, get there, figuring out hacks to do a lot of things that don't scale but are really important in the beginning. And these kind of skills don't exist in a lot of specialists who are in the large corporate sector. You need to get people who have this kind of entrepreneurial knack. And if you have the right team in the beginning, you can kind of get ahead as compared to a lot of other folks in the ecosystem.
Okay, I do want to talk about the marketplace model in the country as well. With it, I want for you to really comment on some things that you wish you had known perhaps when you started this journey, before we talk about the bigger picture when it comes to regulation, the ecosystem, government regulation, etc. for the e-commerce market and the model here in the country. What would you want to tell our viewers?
Yeah, so we are a very unique marketplace from one perspective, right? We work with only small businesses on the supply side and like small individuals on the demand side, right? Most of the marketplaces before us were trying to organize a lot of branded and organized part of the ecosystem, and the kind of challenges we had were very unique in the same way that we had to go and professionalize a lot of these small manufacturers. They've never gone online, they've never used tools, they don't know how to price the right product online, they don't know how to, for example, catalog it right so that they get ahead in terms of distribution, right? A lot of these were learned by the largest sellers for the large marketplaces in India. So when we got in, we were surprised by a lot of things that we had to do for the first time in the ecosystem, and we learned it over time, figured out how do we make them better with tools around CRMs, with tools around branding tools, so that they can stand out in the beginning, with tools around right way to price, right way to recognize what are the right trends for your kind of products on the marketplace. But a lot of these things we figured out when we got into our market, which is very unique in our case.
Okay. One of the comments that came up earlier in the panel was organic growth. So I want to pick that up and talk about organic versus inorganic. What should businesses know? How much of perhaps your time, energy, money, etc. should be spent on organic versus inorganic? What should they keep in mind?
Okay, so I think you always start organic, right? You start organic, you make sure you have a page, you make sure that you have the right content on the page, you make sure that you are constantly refreshing it with the right kind of content. If you're in Instagram, again, your profile and your business page are interchangeable, right? So start using all of that initially to start viraling your content. Go early, depending on how you're seeing the outcomes come on your page. For example, I'll talk of a brand. We have a brand on Instagram called Hathkarga. They viral hugely, but parallelly they also make sure that they're converting what they viral into the marketing space, which is where they start spending their first dollar online. So I think it's always going to be a mix of both. It should be a derivative of what your business P&L looks like. I think that's where you start your journey, to say what's available, and then start solving for acquiring the largest set of customers, which will always be a combination of the right organic and inorganic. It can't be a percentage saying, hey, do 20% today and do 40% later. Let the business of acquisition tell you how efficient you can make the business. So I think that's the journey you constantly need to take.
Okay.
I think just building on Archana's point, she covered most of the thing. The only thing I would say in sequencing is it's always, if you're launching a brand, you should focus exclusively on doing organic first, because inorganic customer feedback and metrics can be misleading at times, particularly when you're just launching. Until you are, and it is not just important from economic standpoint, but also to build the confidence of the founder that what he has really works, because organic feedback is most valuable. Those repeat rates are most valuable, and then ultimately it becomes a function of your scale aspirations and economics on what is the mix of organic and inorganic.
All right, I do know there is so much more that we can discuss, especially when it comes to creating and building a business and a brand online, but completely out of time on this panel. Archana, Deepak, Vidit, thank you so much for your time here at the studios. All right, completely out of time then on this episode of Leaders of Tomorrow. If you have any feedback for us, our contact details coming up on your screens in just a moment. Do let us know. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.